I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, firing back at the ride-sharing service Uber, the companies who claim the transportation network that has built an empire on its smartphone app is using deceptive advertising.
And I'm Peggy Pico with an in-depth look at how two San Diego nonprofits are helping Tijuana sex trade workers through a new microloan program. But first, Governor Jerry Brown asked for billions of dollars for emergency drought relief. An update on what's being done to improve San Diego County's water supply.
We can fly the small hexacopter over them, measure them, take images of them without them even knowing we're there.
Another use for drones. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. California is bracing for another year of extremely dry conditions. Governor Jerry Brown and state leaders unveiled a $1 billion package today to help us survive the drought. The bill speeds up the distribution of millions of dollars from the governor's budget. It will help communities facing extreme water shortages and unemployment. It also bolsters support for CAL FIRE.
That in the last 2 years, food bank lines have tripled in that community because there are no jobs due to the lack of water.
We're the political people that formulate the general policies. We have a lot of good policies. We have an unprecedented drought. And, when you really bring the hammer down, when you don't, it's a judgment call.
Today's proposal also covers funding for emergency drinking water, groundwater management, and food aid for counties who are suffering because of the dry conditions. You can see a breakdown of the proposal on our website, kpbs.org. Now, part of the governor's relief package will help struggling agriculture workers in the Central Valley. Here in San Diego County, 4,000 farms have also been hit hard, not because they've run out of water, but because water is squeezing their budgets. That's caused hundreds of farmers to shut off their water and abandon their crops. The losses include 10,000 acres of avocado groves. Leaders with the County Farm Bureau say farmers rely on rain during the winter, so they don't have to spend as much on water.
Because of that expensive water for some of our crops, particularly citrus and avocado, what we call our permanent crops, they're getting no more money for the fruit just because they spend more money on the water.
He says farmers pay approximately $1,400 per acre foot of water. He says when a farm shuts down, it also puts workers out of a job. Peggy Pico continues our coverage of drought relief with an update on the county's water restrictions.
Joining me with further details are my guests, Dana Freehoff, a water resource manager with the San Diego County Water Authority, and Megan Behrens, executive director of San Diego Coastkeeper. And Dana, California is in its fourth consecutive year of a drought. What long-term infrastructure plans are there in place right now?
Well, what's exciting is that coming up this fall, in around October of 2015, our Carlsbad seawater desalination facility will come online, which is an excellent drought-proof supply. So that is one of the infrastructure projects we're very excited about that's coming online. We've also expanded the San Vicente Reservoir so that in times when it is wet, we can bring water down, store it, and have available for dry years like today.
And Dina, when will we start seeing the results of this desalination plant?
Well, again, it's expected to come online this year in 2015 and start delivering water to our region. So it's something we're very excited about. And what we see as the next potential is water recycling. We really see that as an untapped resource as far as the next increment of supply.
We'll come back to that. So this year we're going to be getting water from that plant.
That is correct.
I see. And Megan, desalination is just a part of the solution, correct?
It is just a part. There is going to be a long-term impact from this drought, which we expect is going to continue. Here in San Diego, we import most of our water, and it's not a really good long-term solution to be investing in infrastructure we don't need. what we do see is conservation as the least expensive, most efficient way to quote-unquote produce new water, and then reuse and recycling. These are less energy intensive than other options, and it helps us create water here in San Diego to use.
Well, water restrictions imposed by the state's Water Resource Control Board extended restrictions that are already in place. Megan, how does that change the restrictions, this extension that we already are using right now?
This is a clear signal from the State Water Board that we have to continue to conserve. This is a long-term process and something we have to invest in now and into the future. And we really hope that the State Board will go further and create permanent mandatory restrictions. We know that mandatory restrictions result in better water conservation than voluntary restrictions, that San Diego doesn't have enough water now, probably won't in the future. So this is something we really need to do and to enforce.
Well, how would you rate local water authorities in enforcing current water restrictions?
We have the Water Authority that oversees a lot of retail water agencies which are responsible for enforcing. And one of the challenges is that we don't know how enforcement is going. There isn't currently reporting on that enforcement. And so we'd like to see that. We'd like to be able to compare how is enforcement tracking with conservation. And we know there are lots of low-hanging fruit left for conservation. There's overwatering, irrigation that might be broken or that people just don't realize is leaking out into the streets and being wasted. So those are the things to attack first, and then go after some of the harder things to do.
Now, Dana, let's say the drought ends and we have several years of average or above average rainfall. Would that take care of our county's water problems?
Oh, absolutely not. We have to continue to be diligent, both in conservation and trying to change the mindset of our residents and businesses to, get away from the ornamental lawns and to more low water using plants. As we've talked about, we need to look at expanding water recycling through potable reuse is probably our best bet.
But why wouldn't it? If our reservoirs come up and our snowpack comes up, why wouldn't it meet the demands here for the next few years?
Right. It's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's because the reliability of our imported sources, especially from the State Water Project, which is from Northern California. There are currently, environmental restrictions, environmental regulations that could potentially limit the amount of water we have available from up north. And we've had a prolonged drought on the Colorado River also that could impact our imported sources. So our goal is to reduce our reliance on those imported sources through conservation and through local projects.
And Megan, how would you like to get better compliance from local businesses and residents on conserving water?
Well, education is key, and there are quite a few campaigns out there doing that, but education is not enough. So there needs to be a next step. If somebody receives a warning about water waste, there has to be a consequence to continuing to do that. And again, this is a long-term project, so we really need a new conservation ethic. We need to have a different relationship with water in this region.
All right, Megan and Dana, thanks very much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A new Charger Stadium will likely cost upwards of $1.5 billion. That word comes from the head of the mayor's advisory group charged with recommending a site and financing plan. Adam Day gave an update on the group's progress today to a city council committee.
It doesn't need to be a facility that has all the bells and whistles because I don't think that's the San Diego style. But it'll be something that's functional, that works, and that hopefully serves as an economic catalyst.
In addition to Charger football games, the stadium would also host San Diego State games, college bowls, and other special events, much like it does right now. The task force will finish its plan by May 20th. Oceanside is just about set to ban smoking in outdoor patios 1 year after a divided city council there couldn't agree on the rules. The new ban prohibits smoking in outdoor dining areas, including bars and restaurant patios. Similar laws have already passed in other cities around the county. The ordinance still faces a final vote. If approved, it would go into effect within 30 days. San Diego Yellow Cab has joined 19 other cab companies suing Uber for false advertising. Speak City Heights reporter Megan Burks joins us with the latest.
Now, at the center of the complaint is a campaign calling Uber vehicles the safest rides on the road. Cab companies say that's a misrepresentation of facts that's hurting the taxi industry's reputation and costing it money. Attorney Ben Shifton says his clients are losing revenue because Uber is essentially telling their customers taxi safety is subpar.
What the case is really trying to do is just level the playing field. If Uber wants to compete with the taxi industry, they're welcome to do so, but they need to do so fairly and without making misrepresentations to consumers.
Now, taxi drivers have to get a live scan background check before they can pick up customers. It uses fingerprints and is what schools and hospitals use when they're hiring people. Uber uses the company HireEase. It combs through court records, a criminal database, a sex offender registry, and driving records. The cab companies say it's less comprehensive, and Uber calls the lawsuit frivolous. It says its safety features go beyond the background check. It says its mobile app gives consumers an unprecedented level of transparency that holds drivers accountable. It lets them rate their drivers, see who's picking them up, and it creates an electronic record of the trip. The cab companies are seeking an injunction against Uber's safety advertising and monetary damages. It's not yet known if the case will go to trial, but a similar complaint from the San Francisco and Los Angeles district attorneys is moving through the courts. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
A follow-up now on SeaWorld's sea lion rescue mission. It looks like some sea lion trainers will be able to return to their regular duties. Tomorrow they will present information sessions on the sea lion pups. Trainers were reassigned earlier this month to help with the park's animal rescue team. So far, they've rescued more than 500 sea lions this year. The pups have washed up along the California shore, sick and starving. The park has donated $25,000 to other rescue centers to help the pups recover. SeaWorld will see if trainers can stage the sea lion and otter show next week. A bill to protect courtroom rights of transgendered Californians was approved today by the State Assembly. It bans discrimination against transgender people by prohibiting how attorneys reject prospective jurors. It also bars them from assuming a person's gender status will cause him or her to be biased while serving on a jury. A new warning about a phone scam involving taxes and the State Board of Equalization. So far, it has targeted small business owners from Santa Cruz to Los Angeles. Taxpayers have notified the Board of Equalization, or BOE, saying they are getting calls from somebody who claims to be an officer and who has a BOE phone number flashing on caller ID. This person demands payment for a tax liability, or else he threatens them with arrest.
There are a lot of victims being called by fake people posing as tax officials or police officers. We just want to let the public know that the tax agencies will never demand payment over the phone, either cash, cashier's check, credit card, debit, and we certainly do not threaten taxpayers as well.
If anyone receives one of the phony calls, you may call the Board of Equalization Customer Service Center. A judge has approved a $10 million class action lawsuit against Target over a massive data breach in 2013. As many as 40 million credit and debit card accounts were exposed. The move allows those affected to begin filing claims up to $10,000 with proof of their losses. Target's data breach hurt its holiday sales that year. The company offered free credit monitoring for affected customers and overhauled its security systems. Hundreds of farm workers in Baja California are on strike this week. They've been blocking the main highway running through the state. Our Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero says it may affect produce heading our way.
The workers pick strawberries, cucumbers, and tomatoes in a 50-mile stretch of Baja California. They're protesting low wages and other workplace abuses. They agreed to stop blocking the Transpeninsular Highway today in negotiations with the government. But many are still refusing to work. The General Secretary for the state government, Francisco Rueda Gomez, told me production is not at risk because 18,000 formal workers are still in the fields. He says protesters are mostly migrant informal workers who come from southern Mexico, about 1,800 of them. I also spoke to LA Times reporter Richard Morosi, who's on the scene watching developments. He says protests have calmed down, though there was looting and clashing with the police earlier this week, and about 200 people were arrested. But he says there's no telling what will happen next.
A lot of the greenhouses right now are sitting there empty of workers and the crops are going unpicked. It's not clear what kind of impact on production it's having, but it's being taken very seriously by authorities here because they've dispatched hundreds of state, local, police, and Army soldiers.
Morosi also said there's no guarantee the road won't get closed again. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Tijuana sex workers can now apply for small business microloans. Peggy Pico talks with 2 San Diego nonprofits making it possible.
About 9,000 women and girls in Tijuana are sex workers in the binational sex trade. Now a partnership program called Estima will offer some of these women an alternative source of income to help them start their own small businesses with microloans. Wynn Cox, co-founder of the San Diego-based nonprofit Women's Empowerment International, and Elisa Sabatini, executive director of the local nonprofit Via International. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you.
When your all-volunteer nonprofit organization has funded more than 20,000 loans worldwide, how many loans and how much money will each loan provide through the Estima program?
We'll be providing enough loan money initially for 60 women. The loans that they will get will be between $200 and $450. And then if that will go on for 15 months, and then it's quite possible that it's actually likely we'll fund the next group of 60 women at that same rate.
And Elisa, this program is specifically for women who work in the sex trade industry in Tijuana. How do they qualify?
The women in this particular segment of our programming are women that are involved in a study based on the UCSD Global Health Program. They really are qualifying by their own volition, their own interest in having an alternative source of income. And so they're self-selected, actually.
So they're in the sex trade, they seem to be married, single, children, drug-free. I know there's some actual real qualifications.
Many are married, many are single.
I see.
And then also we have looked for the ones that have really the largest opportunity for success.
And VIA, your organization, has given women these types of microloans before. What kind of industries do they tend to choose as far as their small businesses?
Yes, we've been working for about 10 years in Tijuana and Mexicali, Mexico with this program. And the kinds of work that they often do are resale. Mary Kay Cosmetics is a big one. And another kind of program is food production, which is often small things like tamales being sold at the schools, or other small salsa production, those kinds of things that they can sell in their own community.
And when a recently published study suggests that micro-lending may not be as efficient, I would say an efficient way to reduce poverty, that's what the study looked at. What's your response to that?
Well, worldwide, we give microloans, but we always partner with a Bank for the Poor or organization, nonprofit, that offers a larger portfolio of things. We fund the loans, but the women are so poor that starting a business is not going to lift them out of poverty. It will put food on the table. It will help them educate their children, but it's going to be a generational thing of working their way out of poverty. So we partner with organizations such as VIA that will offer healthcare information, business training, sometimes helps them with creating savings, helps them with their self-esteem and their so their sense of that they are valued, respected, successful women. And it can't just be one thing.
Yeah, and let me ask the same question for you. There's this study saying, oh, maybe it's not a great way to tackle poverty. What do you think about it?
Well, I think that in our case, VIA International is an integrated community development program. So our idea is that life happens. So loans are not a simple solution. But if you look at a woman who's had an opportunity for some kind of additional income, and then that means their child goes to school, and those children look back at their mom and they say, look what my mom is doing. And so the next generation takes that opportunity to
a greater success and a different level of living.
Let's talk about this UCSD study. It's going to study the impact, I understand, of microfinancing on the women who are participating in the Estima project. What specifically are they going to be looking at?
Specifically, they're looking at the health effects, meaning is their incidence of HIV/AIDS lower? Is their personal violence against them decreased? And are they economically better off than they were before they started these projects? This is a very vulnerable population. They do have a higher incidence of HIV/AIDS, and they are subject to a lot of violence. So it'll be very interesting to see, and it'll be a landmark study because it's just never been done.
Yeah, we're looking forward to following this study and hearing from both of you again about this. So Wynn and Elisa, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thanks for letting us come on.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. Big money behind new high-tech devices designed for baby boomers. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
A dead gray whale was discovered today drifting near Torrey Pine State Beach. The roughly 18-foot carcass was spotted this morning offshore. One official says it looks like it's been dead for a while. The plan is to eventually use a rescue boat to pull it to Fiesta Island, where it can be transported to a landfill. Southern California whale watchers are reporting a busier than usual migration for the once endangered gray whales. The mammals travel along the California shore. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says 2 San Diego scientists are using new technology to get a bird's eye view of the whales.
Audrey Evans only needs a quick glance to find gray whales.
When they exhale, there's a little bit of the water vapor that comes into the air. For a gray whale, it's about 15 feet high, and because they have 2 openings at the top of their head for their blowholes, it creates a heart-shaped blow. So the blow is the first thing that we look for.
The Birch Aquarium education specialist says whale watchers have spotted more than 700 whales since fall. That's 100 more than a year ago. And this whale migration season still has 2 months to go.
The weather was so calm, everyone is going, my gosh, we're seeing so many gray whales. Part of that is because the weather was so calm that you could see them forever.
Biologist Wayne Perriman has studied cetaceans since the 1970s, gray whales since the 1980s. He says the overall population is holding steady at about 20,000, and they're breeding.
We've seen really good reproductive levels the last 4 years, lots of calves, over 1,000 calves migrating northbound.
A shifting environment may be the reason. Gray whales feed in the Arctic and then travel south to Mexico to have babies. Perriman says global warming may be changing the equation by extending how long the whales can feed up north.
Gray whales are Arctic whales. That's where they make a living. And the Arctic is changing very rapidly. So by watching gray whales, we get kind of a window into what's happening in the Arctic.
And watching those whales is about to get easier.
Let's fire it up.
Perriman and fellow researcher John Durbin are pioneering the use of drones to photograph gray whales. Durbin says his team's small hexacopter has already captured amazing images of killer whales off the coast of Canada.
After the first flight, we brought the hexacopter down, downloaded the images, and I was blown away. I didn't realize how much better they would be than we had before.
Durbin says the pictures are so good that researchers can identify general health, pregnancy, and even individuals. He says the drones hover at about 100 feet, and that offers dramatically better pictures than what they used to get from small planes.
We can fly the small hexacopter over them, measure them, take images of them without them even knowing we're there. There's not even a boat in the water.
And while the pictures are a revelation, Wayne Perriman wants to use the drones to collect biological samples. He says that idea isn't new. Researchers have tried using small boats to get near swimming whales. Scientists then reach long poles with a collector over the animal's blowhole. They were hoping to snag a sample as the whale exhales.
Yeah, baby! They have a hell of a time doing it. And it's not very safe because sometimes the whales take offense to this sort of thing. And we've had whales lash out at them, and that can go poorly.
Perriman says the hexacopter changes the equation. He says the drone can hover just a few feet over the ocean.
So we can put the drone where we want it and then just follow the back of the whale, because we're getting live video, and just slide up its back. When those big nares open up and that breath comes out, we can be right over the top of it.
Capture the blow, and Perriman says there's a wealth of information available to researchers.
If we can sample the blow of a whale, we can capture epithelial cells, so we know we can get DNA, we can tell who they are, we can tell what sex they are. If they're stressed in a nutritive way, if they're too skinny, we can look at the hormone levels in that breath and we can get a scale of how skinny they really are.
Perriman and Durbin plan to photograph gray whales in May as the cetaceans move up the central California coastline. If they succeed in collecting biological samples, they hope to learn more about the whales and the environment the cetaceans rely on. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
We are looking at mild weather for the first day of spring tomorrow. Cloudy along the coast with some peaks of sunshine by the weekend, mostly in the 70s. A little warmer for the inland valleys, upper 70s there. 60s expected in the mountains with plenty of sun. It will feel hot in the desert with temperatures there back into the upper 80s. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Strict water quality standards aimed at protecting the health of an Indian tribe in New Mexico. Learn more about the water utility who has not met those standards. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.